Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to talk about texturing your 3D scenes with AI and how I made this from just a clay render. I already built this scene in C4D using kitbashed assets from David Aryev's course Light Camera Render, which is on School of Motion, and it's full of free kitbashed assets that you can use from amazing artists. Everything you see here is from that course, so if you're interested in C4D or Octane at all, I really recommend that. The two things we're going to need from C4D are a clay render, which I had already exported and posted a couple of years ago as one of my weeklies, and a depth pass. We're going to feed the depth pass into ControlNet to make sure that Stable Diffusion has more context on what we want to create. And if you don't know how to get a depth pass out of C4D Octane, all you have to do is come to the render settings, go to Octane Render, Render AOV group, and in the AOV manager, you add Z-depth. You're going to have to play with this Z-depth max. Here, I found that 90 was giving me a good contrast between the foreground and the background, but we'll take a look at these later, and we'll also talk about things that I could have done better. So here are my two exports. The clay, which does have a little bit of lighting in there because I had already started lighting and texturing the scene, and our depth pass. And you can see that with that value of 90 that I give it, I am losing quite a bit of detail up in the foreground and also in the background. I've noticed that all these windows back here are kind of gone. And we can also always clamp that in Photoshop a little bit with levels to make sure that we're extracting some of that detail. But at the end of this tutorial, I'm going to go through a separate method where I think I could have brought more of this detail into my render. Okay, we're in Stable Diffusion, and today I'm going to give you also a little bit of a tour after you have Stable Diffusion installed on how you're going to get ControlNet and how to set it up in the best way. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Extensions, and don't worry about all these tabs that I have open up here. I'm just testing a lot of different plugins right now, but you'll have fewer in here. As usual, you come in here, and you can check for any updates for extensions that you have installed. But if you don't have ControlNet yet, you're going to go to Available. You're just going to click Load From for what's already filled out in here in Automatic 1111. And then you're going to go down and find ControlNet. I already have mine installed, so it's not showing up here. But once you have it, you would apply and restart UI, and it would update you to the latest ControlNet. Then you'll see in my ControlNet down here, you're going to see that I have several different ControlNet units. To make sure that you can do that, under settings, you're going to look for ControlNet here, and then you're going to set your multi-ControlNet max models to 3, 5, however many you want. I've found that 3 is all I need right now, but I might go up to 5 just because there's new models from ControlNet coming out constantly that really do add a lot of extra features. Okay, so let's take a look at what I did to texture my scene. First of all, obviously, we're going to be an image to image. I'm going to click here so that it opens up my folder where all my images are being saved. Same as with our last tutorial, I don't remember the prompts that I used or the negative prompts or anything. So what I'm going to do is go to my PNG info tab over here, and I'm going to drag out one of the exports that I got. And here it's going to tell me my prompt, my negative prompt, and all the other details that I need. So now I'm going to click Send to Image. And everything populates right in here as needed. Our little image also comes in here, which I don't need, so I'm going to X out of this. The first thing we're going to drop in here is our clay render, which I've already resized out of C4D to be 770 by 960, which is a pretty manageable size for Stable Diffusion. Then we open ControlNet, and we drop our Z-depth pass in here. And the only thing that I need to do is click Enable on here and choose my model. I'm not choosing a preprocessor because this is already a depth image, so I don't need to pre-process anything. But if I didn't have the depth information, I could throw in my regular image in here, choose the preprocessor depth, and then the appropriate model. Because it's already done, I'm just choosing the model. Also, there's a bunch of other things in here that you should take a look at. There's going to be a difference between using balanced, my prompt is more important, or ControlNet is more important. I just suggest that you play around with these and see what results you get. And I'm going to go into how I got a ton of different results to see what was the best combination for me before going into doing the full rendering. The other thing that I set here is just resize, although our size is correct, so we don't have any issue. And it's even saved my seed from before, but I'm going to set that to random, -1, so that we can get new results out of this. So first things first is how did I get to this prompt, and how did I decide on what model I'm using? Obviously, I knew kind of what I wanted to create. It's a cyberpunk city alley. It's got old shops. It's got AC units, grungy lighting, all of that good stuff that you can put in here. There's a ton of different sites online, which will show you different prompts that you can use in different pieces. Some of these are probably a little bit redundant and maybe not as much needed, but they were working for me, so I kept them. What goes into my negative prompt has more to do with the model that I'm using. As you can see here from the dropdown, I've downloaded a ton of different models. The good thing about this is I have a lot of options. The bad thing is I never really know which model is going to be the best. And if you're interested in models, all you have to do is go to Civet AI, and they have a ton of different models in here. If you filter by checkpoint, all of these checkpoint files that you're getting, these are all models that you can download, put in your Stable Diffusion models folder, and then you can use them with Stable Diffusion. And they each have different styles and different pros and cons. The model I ended up using was Rev Animated, which I really like the results that it gives you. And if you click on the information button for any of these images, it'll give you an example of what the negative prompts that they use for this model are. I ended up finding some on one of these images and copying them from here. But as I said before, I have all of these different models that I could use, and I have all these different combinations of prompts that I could create. What is going to be best for the combination of clay render and depth map that I have, and for the style that I'm looking for. To do that, you scroll down to where it says script here at the bottom, and you open XYZ plot. Once that is open, it's going to give you all the options of things that you can do A/B comparisons with, or XYZ in this case. To figure out all the different combinations of what I want, this is what I did. I selected checkpoint name on the X type, and I just clicked on all the different ones that I wanted to test. This drop-down menu is actually something new for me, and it's awesome to have because I used to have to go into my folder and copy paste the names of the models in here. So you can use that for the different checkpoint names. Then you could come into here and also do different samplers and test out, for each model, I'm going to use, my regular samplers that I would usually test with. So say I want to test my same prompt with all these different models and all these different samplers, and I could even add a third variation into here, but this is really kind of like all I need right now to see what comes out. And usually I'll give it a batch size of 2 just so that I have a little bit more to go on. Then I click generate, and I'm going to get a very big image grid that shows me all the differences. Here's an example of the grid that it created for me, where I did 6 different versions, I think, for each one. Using different models, it gives me an idea of what looks it's going to give me. So as I said before, I settled on Rev Animated 121, which I liked anyway. So once I've done all my tests, I've decided on my checkpoint, I've decided on the prompt that works for me, the negative prompts that work for me. Then I'm probably going to bring my sampling steps up to, say, 35 or 40 to start giving it more time. Bring my batch size also up to 6 or 9 so that I can get more examples. And I'm going to run my generation. So after I've gotten a few options, I collect the images that I like the most. I bring all my results that I like into Photoshop, and you can see that I started with this image, and then I start adding details. I like the background here more. It's more colorful. I do like the smoke, so I'm not going to totally paint that out. Then I bring in the shop front in here because I liked that it had lights inside of the open door. That was in my original concept for this piece. I like that it had the neon on the outside, and this vending machine also gives it a little bit more light. Other things that I did were change this little light over here because from prompting that I wanted this to be an alleyway, it kind of took that and tried to incorporate the text in there. But there was a version that just had a little arrow in here, and I thought that was cute, so I brought it in. So this is pretty good, but it is a little bit hodgepodge, and it is a little bit of a mix where if you came in here, you can kind of tell that it doesn't all go perfectly together. There's going to be some seams. There's going to be some errors that I made when I painted and when I gave it when I painted out this bicycle in here. But I also want Stable Diffusion to take another pass at this to make sure that all the light reflections and all of that feels cohesive. I export that composite and I bring it back into image to image with my same prompt and everything, but this time what I'm going to do is bring the denoising strength down to, say, 0.3. The denoising strength basically is going to tell Stable Diffusion how much liberty it has to deviate from what it's seeing in the image. I want to constrain it quite a bit because I want to get something very similar to what I have. I just want to make sure that there's no seams for my masking and that everything looks a little bit more cohesive. I still keep my depth pass in ControlNet just because I want to make sure to reinforce that this is the image that we're going for. I click generate and get my final image. From there, if I wanted to upscale it, all I have to do is click on tiling, I'll go to resize by and say I'm going to upscale this 2 times. That will give me a final render of 1536 by 1920, which is pretty good for your phone. Oh, and of course, my batch size goes down to 1 now because I only want to create 1 version of this. And this was the final piece that I ended up using and posting. It has all the elements that we kind of talked about, but it also doesn't have a lot of the stuff that we talked about at the beginning, which is those AC units. There was a lot of detail in here that I lost, detail in the background that I lost. So I'm going to try a different approach to this. I'm going to add 1 more ControlNet pass and try to do live what the result of that would be. Okay, I dropped my clay render in here again because we're going to start from scratch. I have my ControlNet with my depth pass, and now I've added a second ControlNet. For my second ControlNet, I'm going to use Canny as the preprocessor and Canny as the model. What Canny does is that it draws line that it detects in the image to help ControlNet also keep some of those details present. I'm going to allow preview just to show you what it does. You can see it started drawing some lines from details that it saw in our clay render. You can play around with the threshold to make sure that you're picking up a little bit more detail. And now that it seems like it has quite a few more details in here, maybe I'll bring the threshold even lower than this and try to get those AC units to start really popping up. And now I'm going to run my Stable Diffusion 1 more time, and I'll make 3. I'll bring this down to 25 so it's a little bit faster. I'm going to bring the denoising strength back up a little bit because I wanted to give it a little bit more freedom to fill in some of those gaps. And we hit generate. I have everything set up, my clay render, both my control nets, the depth pass, and now I've added the Canny with the edge detection, and I've played around a little bit with the threshold, with what is more important for me. You could try my prompt is more important, and that will erase a little bit of what you're using here. But I ended up going with balance just to show you the difference. And here are the 4 generations that it made. You can see that these are really a lot closer to my original image. They have the AC units, this little gate up here, details that the other ones didn't have. And all of my original neons that were on this wall have also been kept because it's detected the lines for them. But say I like this 4th one, it looks kind of cool. I'm going to go in here, I'm going to click it and open it and compare this to my original. This is where I ended up with my other one after only using the depth pass. This is the result that we're getting from using both control nets, the Canny and the depth mode. And it has, you can see that it has a lot more preserved detail. I could keep running these. This is a lot closer to the original image I created. This has a lot more creative freedom. Something that I was missing in my original one was some detail here in the background. As you can see, that just quickly fades off. It's just a different look. It's 2 different options, really. I wouldn't be able to tell you which one I prefer right now. This one is getting a little bit busy for me back here with all the neons. I do like that it brought some smoky light in here. I do like this green detailing in here, but I'm missing my light spill from inside this open door, although it has preserved the details of the crates that I had in here instead of just making up a bicycle. So as you can see, there's plus and minuses to both methods. For each case, you can try out both and see what's working best for you. You could always start photobashing elements of one method with elements of the other, and then bring it all back together into Stable Diffusion to see what you get. So to summarize, we kitbashed together our 3D scene in C4D. We brought the clay render of that and the Z-depth pass into Stable Diffusion to use image to image to generate more ideas. We photobashed different pieces of those ideas together in Photoshop, and then run it again through Stable Diffusion just to make sure everything was cohesive. After that, we also looked at a different method to try to bring out more detail out of our renders. Overall, I think there's a lot of possibilities with this workflow. There's a lot of different things to try and experiment with. Next week, I'm going to talk about how I created a model using EJ's 3D character style, and now I can create my own characters in EJ's style with just the push of a button.